Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. Part 2 of the Jaguar project. Just down here removing some chutney from the underside of the carriage. No big deal. Well, let me show you some of the progress we've made so far. Alright, so what have we done so far? Not much. Just remove the engine. Standard engine removal processes associated with this particular step. Nothing special. Disconnect what you got to disconnect. Remove your wires. Remove your vacuum hoses. Make sure you're not yanking any of these cables or wires out as you're pulling it out. Just go slow. Take your time. For this particular motor, I had to take the air conditioner off. There was a wiring harness that went underneath. I try not to cut wires if I can. If I have to, I will reinstall the engine into the motor mount position and remove wires again, and then finish taking the engine out. I'm not a big cut the wire kind of guy unless you know for sure the engine's junk and you're just trashing it and you're moving on. Alright, so we'll go over some of particular finds with this vehicle. 2 of the distributor coils had crazy amounts of oxidation going on in there, so I don't know what's going on there. Either way, as I have stated earlier, we're going to upgrade this. What does that mean? I don't know if that just means rebuild it as it was and press on, or if I'm going to install some kind of coil pack system. Haven't yet quite determined that one yet. I'm still up in the air what I want to do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments if you want to see a coil system or a distributor system. I don't think you guys really care. Let's see, what else did we find with the actual engine? Nothing crazy. It's pretty standard 30-year-old vehicle stuff. Everything leaking. We did crack 1 or 2 of the connectors, taking off some of the bits and bobbles. Luckily, we didn't break any of the injector connectors. This is the model with the updated injector style, so you'll notice there's no rubber hose and clamps associated to those. Again, I had to take off the fuel system to get wiring harnesses out. That's why you're looking at what you're looking at. This particular piece here, sorry, lighting's not the best in the garage. This particular piece here is just an air injection system. That's coming all off, and it makes these little itty bitty holes that you can see here into the intake manifold. We'll figure out a way to cover those up conveniently, quickly, and cheaply. The other thing I found while working on here is the transmission just has a little bit of some mouse nesting, so something decided at one point it was going to live up in there. You know, that's what happens when cars sit for long periods of time. Okay, as you saw earlier, I had to take out the radiator and the air conditioner condenser and pretty much the whole exhaust. And an interesting thing I found with this vehicle is the exhaust manifold collector. So this would attach directly to the exhaust manifold on the engine. Has these, I'm assuming they're catalytic converter pieces in the pipe itself. Now, that does not look like it flows very well to me. I've never seen anything like that. I don't know if that's standard Jaguar stuff or if that was something added particularly for these later model years. If you guys have more knowledge on that, or you've seen this on other vehicles before, you know, hey, mention down in the comments. Another interesting thing I found with this car is the exhaust is inside's only about 1 3/8 inch diameter. Really tiny exhaust. I've never seen an actual exhaust that small before, except on older 4-cylinders. The other thing that I found on this exhaust is they at some point replaced this exhaust, and to make room around the transmission, what they did was they pounded this piece flat. So this whole section's like a D. So that can't flow very well, I assure you that. So continuing to go down the road of odd things, somebody at one point replaced the front suspension, which is why the front suspension is not nearly as squishy as the rear suspension. Now, all they did was replace the shock absorber. They did not replace the springs. They still look like they're factory springs. But however, when I was taking off the drive shaft to the vehicle, let me see if I can't find it. When I was taking off the drive shaft, the bolts that connected to the transmission were loose. Not loose to the point where you could make them shake with your hand, but loose to the point where it didn't take much torque to move them. So I think at one point someone was going to do the suspension, finish up the front side, realized that to do the suspension here, on these cars you got to drop this rear end piece, and decided that they were just going to ignore that and press on with whatever else they had to do in their lives. So little things like that I'm finding interesting about this car. There's, I know that there was, as stated in the previous video, there was people in here doing things before us. For example, they installed an alarm. I cut the speaker off. This is one of the few wires I don't mind cutting. I cut the speaker off, which was, it's hard to tell here. The speaker was mounted into the engine, into the fender well of the front passenger side here. So those holes, if we shine a flashlight into the wheel well, those holes go directly into the wheel well, and they use like 1.5 inches wide or long metal screws. So I'm sure they popped the tire at one point on those screws. But yes, regardless, what they did was they took and they installed that directly through this cover. So that was a nice big gaping hole in a cover that's supposed to be semi-environment proof to the interior of the vehicle. So that's exciting to find. There's also a couple of wires on the inside of the vehicle where you could tell they had hooked up something. Maybe they had a speaker system in here at one time. A couple of these kinds of things where, you know, the previous person might have cut the speaker system out himself and kept it. There's a couple little random things like that we're finding. Nothing terrible, nothing unexpected for an old vehicle. These engines here, when you take them out, so for these engines, when you take them out, they do have these lift points installed on them right here, these little hooks. But if you notice, if you use a standard engine hoist system, it will hit this. So when you're taking these engines out, I recommend putting something here. These are just pieces of vinyl flooring from leftover interior project. Heavy duty piece of rubber basically. And that will insulate you enough to where you're not going to damage. There's no dents, no scratches, no deformation of the material there. Okay, well that's it for today's update on the project. It's February 28th, so it's about a month for me to remove the engine. Still kind of on schedule. Currently haven't spent any money, so we're infinitely below budget. That's good news. Next video, we'll have the engine split. I'll take some weights, so we'll measure the engine, take actual length, width. Some people are interested in that kind of stuff, nerding out on some of the tech data, so we'll weigh the engine, we'll weigh the transmission, we'll weigh the engine transmission together, we'll split the two, start getting into taking the engine apart, clean up old space on the workbench. We're gonna have to start spending money here, guys, so I'll show you what I'm buying, see if it works or not. So in case we run into a situation like, hey, I bought this gasket set, doesn't quite cover everything, you guys will have that information for future use. You don't have to go through the struggles that I'm going through here. I don't plan on showing a lot of DIY wrenching type stuff on this video set. I think others have covered that pretty well. There's a couple of places that do YouTube videos and solely concentrate on these older Jaguars. So there's plenty of videos on how to remove the brakes and fix your ignition if you just want to do a tune-up, or if you got a leaky something or other. Yes, there'll plenty of videos out there who already show how to do this stuff. I'm not really going to try to show that with you. I just want to, show the progress of the vehicle, what we're doing. You guys might be interested. When we get into doing actual like modifications and finding problems and little things like that, I'll show you. But no one wants to sit around and watch me turn a wrench. Well, I guess that's it for today's video, and I'll leave you guys on a joke. If a car chases you, you'll get tired. But if you chase cars, you'll get exhausted.